And a fun fact about Sustainable Places is you can go back to all previous years and you can watch all of the recordings from all of the workshops in the history of the event. So even though there might not be 1,000 people online now, over time we always guide people back to see the papers of the past and the presentations of the past. So it's nice that we do this recording, and then it takes some processing, but we hang it afterwards on the webpage. And if you haven't found that yet, you can just go up to SP any year and go back and see Mia for the last 4 years in a row, if you would like to do that. Wonderful. So I think we have 1,400 in a few seconds. So we'll kick off this paper session number 5. I have the pleasure of being the session chair. And we have paper sessions across the conference. So half of the conference is clustering workshops, and maybe a third of the conference are paper sessions that are a little bit more scientific. And then everyone has the opportunity to write a paper and submit it to Open Research Europe. So we shifted 2 years ago from MDPI, which is not European, to Open Research Europe, which is European. We're all here paid by the European Commission for 95% of our audience. So it's appropriate we shifted to that platform. And by doing this, we can have a peer-reviewed publication in OR. So this is something that I've committed to doing for the paper I will present today, because we should publish more. So here is the agenda for the session. We're opening it up. And we'll have 4 papers today. Each one has a time slot of 20 minutes, 15 minutes for the briefing and 5 minutes for questions, or if a presenter wants to arrange 10 and 10 or takes the full 20, we adjust accordingly. And we'll have with us in this session, Mia from VTT, myself from R2M, Nitesh from ArcelorMittal, and Danielle from the University of Sheffield. So I look forward to the 4 papers that we're about to hear. I hope you find them stimulating and that they create some conversations for later in the afternoon or this evening at the social dinner, which promises to be excellent. So then I'll open up our first presentation. I can invite Mia to come take the stage. I'll sit back down in the audience. And I think all we need to do is wait one moment for the slides to catch up on the system. I just want to make sure that we're in full presentation mode, and what you see here is the full slide. And it is, and we're ready to go. Mia, take us away.
Thank you. Maybe I'll sit down so I have used this microphone. Okay, so I am Mia Ala-Juusela from VTT, the Technical Research Center of Finland. And I have prepared this presentation with Clemens here in the audience, and Andreas Tuerk, who is the coordinator of Access project, which this is related to. Yeah, and we have studied the funding instruments that would support rollout of positive energy buildings in this Access project. It's a full deliverable in that project, but we are going to write a paper based on that and our findings about that. So first, I didn't mention that I'm actually also the technical coordinator of Access project. So that's my role in there, but I have been involved in several tasks also. But first I will tell you a little bit about the Access project and about our meaning of positive energy buildings, and then some benefits that are related to the main components of positive energy buildings, which are also relevant for energy efficiency and renewable energy sources. And then some words about European legal framework, because most of the funding instruments are trying to support those frameworks or their aims. And then finally to the financing schemes that are available for positive energy buildings and their suitability for the Access demos. I will come back to the demos in a minute. And then we found some recommendations that would be needed for the financing instruments to better support the rollout of positive energy buildings. So Access project started already 5 years ago, and we will be ending in November this year, so it's more than 5 years even. And it's about flexible, user-centric, energy-positive houses. And we are trying to look how near zero energy buildings could be transformed to positive energy buildings, so that they would produce more energy than is used in them. We are 21 partners from 8 countries around Europe, and we have 4 demonstration buildings. So this is about buildings and not so much about districts or areas or neighborhoods. So the 4 demonstrations are in Austria, Finland, Belgium, and Spain. In Austria, it's a renovation case, and it's a former industrial complex. It's a floater silo, actually, that is going to be residential buildings, or actually office and residential use. In Finland, we have a newly built apartment building, and the residents have moved there in last August. In Belgium, we have a social housing complex in Hasselt, and that was already built, but it was improved during Access project. And in Spain, we actually needed to change the demonstration because there was some challenges in getting the permissions for the new build, and then we changed it to a historical residential building in Valladolid. It's a 16th century palace that is renovated to positive energy house. And what we were doing in this task or this study, we were trying to look how the funding instruments would support the solutions that are needed for making these positive energy houses. First, we needed to decide what are we aiming at? What are positive energy buildings in our mind? For us, it means an energy-efficient building that produces more energy than it uses by renewable sources and over time span of 1 year. So that is the time line. But it also should have a high self-consumption rate, so to use most of the renewables itself, high energy flexibility, so that it would be using the energy when it's available from renewables. But also, it's very important that it maintains a high-quality indoor environment and support the well-being of the users. The users are in center of the positive energy buildings in excess. And also, we thought it would be important to integrate the future technologies like electric vehicles to support also this flexibility and self-consumption, and also this would help in getting the excess energy to the grids. To make a positive energy building, you need to include several technical solutions. You can't solve it with one solution. So you need to have an energy efficient building, you need to have the renewable energy source, and then you have to have a control system that makes this renewable energy production and demand to meet in time-wise. And then it's good to also have a storage for the energy. But in addition to these technological components, there's also an important role for the users, for the building users, to, for instance, make this demand response and flexibility possible, and also improve the energy efficiency. They can also have a role there. So these benefits of positive energy buildings are related to the funding instruments in a way that you need to think of what you are trying to get with the funding. So there's benefits, and also partly these are can be used to fund these solutions, these technical solutions. So the benefits are related to energy efficiency. For instance, the reduced costs and reduced emissions and reduced risks, for instance, for the energy supply. And also improved flexibility and improved indoor conditions. And this, in addition to these energy efficiency benefits, there are benefits of the renewable energy sources and the storage and control systems. There's a reduced dependency on the external grids and the price variety. Then if you have your own sources, you are not so dependent on the price varieties. There's also improved self-sufficiency and resilience in case of extreme conditions or something that happens. And the renewable energy sources are important support to local economy and employment. These are just examples. There are many, many more that have been found, for instance, by the International Energy Agency. Then about the legal framework of Europe, in Europe. Why we are looking at this, as I mentioned, often these funding instruments are structured so that they would support the legal framework, so that we would reach the aims of the legal frameworks. There's this legal framework. It includes elements for both energy efficiency improvements and they increase the capacity of renewable energy generation in Europe. But I'm not going very deep in this, but the important maybe finding is that these are related, dependent on the individual member states. They are very flexible, the rules, the legal frameworks, and they provide a lot of possibilities to frame in the member states, sometimes even regional level. And so the practices and emphasis of these legal frameworks vary, and this affects also the financial frameworks. I'm not going to very deep in this, but these are just examples, and this also shows that there are a lot of different mechanisms. So it's, I don't know, it's a lot of things that you should consider, you may consider, which affect your ability to build a financial framework and then also a positive energy building. So, and based on that, there are a lot of different financing frameworks. Surprise, surprise. They are on EU level, they are on national level, they are sometimes in regional level, even city level financing opportunities. And sometimes they are divided by technology. So it's quite challenging to find. This is like a example of one financing schemes that are trying to support the renovation wave. So they are support for direct investments, private investments, for research and innovation, or there are support to address the market barriers, and for some technical assistance and advisory. So a lot of instruments available. And then we were trying to look at the suitable schemes. I only present you a couple of demos, not going into all of them, but just examples. So for the Austrian demo, there was a photovoltaic subsidy, there was a renovation bonus that was applied from a different provider. thermal component activation system, and some funding available for heating system replacement. But some of the schemes were not suitable for this case because it was not used in residential use earlier before this project. So already here you can see that there are several schemes available for the funding. And for the Belgian demo, there was support from the distribution system operator for installation of heat pumps and also for sort of photovoltaic panels. And there was a free loan for energy efficiency measures because there we also improved the energy efficiency and installed this renewable capacity. Also there, a lot of possibilities. So our conclusion is that there are a lot of instruments available, and it's really challenging for the investor or for the project community to choose where to go for these funding instruments and where to get the funding and where. And if you have several channels, they might have different timings for the decisions. So if you get this funding, you're not sure if you are getting the other one, and where to fund the rest of that in case you are not getting this funding. And the problem, one of the biggest problems was that most of the funding schemes are tied to certain technology, and that is not good for positive energy buildings because you will need these several solutions to make it to the positive side. And it is the idea that this funding should rather take into account the final result. But also, we think that it requires sort of to have the definition of the positive energy building, to tell what are we aiming at, what is that we are trying to get. And also it requires then cooperation between the funding agencies. So our recommendations is that this first one there is that there should be a help desk for applicants. That might be on governmental phase, governmental stage, or that could be like a city level to facilitate which is the funding that you should go for. The rest of these recommendations are mostly for the funding agencies. We recommend to have some kind of cooperation between funding schemes, so that because they may have similar goals, and by aligning them, they could find who is funding which part of that. Yeah, and decide, at that I mentioned already that it should be tied more to the goals than the technologies. And then these funding schemes should also be developed to suit to different target groups because they have different demands at different life cycle stages, if it's new building or renovation. Yeah, and one additional criteria could be that there could be some, because it's this energy poverty is nowadays a big issue, and maybe it could be some additional criteria on how the funding is applied or promoted. And you can read more in the paper that we will be writing about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfectly at 15 minutes. So we have 5 minutes for questions if we would like it. I have the first question. The recommendations were for who?
So the help desk was for governmental organizations or city organizations where they could give advice. And the rest of these are for the funding agencies, for those who are providing the funding.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Let's take them down. You guys are too easy. market. We have the problem in Italy, they'll talk about energy communities, and then you wait 2 years for the regulation, which means everybody that's considering doing that waits 2 years because they want to see the regulation. We just did the same thing for Industry 5.0, and now they say Conto Termico 3.0 starts next year, so the market freezes whenever this happens. So, and it's like a lottery. We also have things that are at the sportello, on demand. So it's a click day, and you prepare this thing, and for a project, you need to get this PV incentive, and in 20 seconds, all the funding's gone. But it can also unlock decision makers. So let me ask this question: are incentives a good or a bad thing? That's my question.
And I understand the contradiction between this, but it's important. The idea is that they would make it faster, the change towards renewables and energy efficiency. But I also see this problem that everybody's waiting. But for instance, for the energy poor people, I think we need that now. They can't wait.
We struggle on the contractual side as well because, as an ESCO, there are some incentives where the project can take benefit, or the person that owns the equipment has to have the benefit. So maybe you have to do a certain kind of contract so that they own the equipment, but I have to finance for 7 years, which means if they go bankrupt, the equipment doesn't belong to them. So it creates a whole bunch of different conditions on the contract, and it can be tricky.
We are going to look at the business models also in future.
I see some questions now, huh?
Yeah, I was just curious on your slide where you say indeed there are funding opportunities at EU, national, regional. How does it look in Finland? I'm asking because typically in France it's the same, but when you look at the conditions, at the end of the day it's the EU which is by far better.
Well, in Finland, we have like a national, and then we might have some city level incentives also. And these are not always aligned.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer your question. Incentives are good or not. My personal opinion is we need them because we have the target to decarbonize the building sector until 2050, and we also did some cost estimation, or not cost estimations, cost calculations and analysis, and we saw that most of the technologies that we used in our project have payback times of more than 20 years, 20 to 40 years. So you cannot finance the investment just with the energy savings that you receive. So there needs to be incentives, otherwise we will not be able to reach our targets.
Yeah. And that was Clemens, my co-author. Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
In the same situation of the paper I will write. Great. So let's see if we can switch the presentation. All right. So now I have to go to the download folder. I have to find number 2 and open it. Full screen mode. And we're off. Danielle, you are the key to this next presentation because you have to tell me when we get to 10 minutes and 15 minutes, and you need to be rude. You just need to say, Tom, Awesome. So we're going to talk about my favorite thing in the world, Super-Heero. Because everybody can be a superhero. And after today, I'll tell you how. Just write me and we'll do it. So it's a pleasure to be here at the conference. It's a pleasure to be talking about this project, Super-Heero, which is concluded. And now there's a new following project called Scaling Super-Heero, because we're going to go big. On this next slide, I had the objective. How much information can I put on a slide to confuse everyone? How did I do? Yeah. So this is a little bit about R2M. For anyone that wants to go back and pause the video in the future and study R2M for hours, it's all on this slide. We're a great company and we do research to market. It's right in the name. So I thought I'd start with the end result. This is the end result. This is where we want to get. community, an award, and a ceremony. There's a mayor involved. There's a person in a wheelchair just by chance. That was great. There's investors. There's people from the project. And the people that did this project had nothing to do with the EU project. They're just a pilot because we brought them something. What did we bring them? An energy efficiency retrofit. We put PV on a supermarket. That's not hard. PV's been around for a while. And what we did is we invited the community to participate in that energy efficiency project. Because any project over time, if you look at it long enough, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it returns 200,000, 400,000, 600,000 if you go out in time. And why not share a little bit of that, just a crumble with the community? And what if you did? Would they like it? Would they be excited about that? Would they participate? Would they be a superhero? We believe so. So that's on the roof of the supermarket. That's the owner. He's a franchise owner. And for the first time, he's got the syndico. He's got the mayor at his supermarket cutting a ribbon and getting an award because his supermarket in that community got engaged with the community on the territory to work with the people and do an energy efficiency project, which if more people did, maybe we'd meet our targets. That's on me on the roof praying to God that it's not going to catch on fire during the ceremony. It didn't, or maybe there was a bird, a plane, I don't know, in the sky. There was Superman above. That's awesome. This guy is the guy that installed it, the technology provider. It looks like he should be on Time magazine, you know? Looks like a hero because it's the celebration afterwards. So if you do a project, why not have a celebration? Why not put it in the newspaper? Why not get some media involved? And on the right, the guy with the curly hair looks like he's surfing into the wind. That's the energy manager from the brand talking to the franchise owner. And sometimes brands and franchise owners don't get along or they need some help to collaborate in new ways because, you know, the franchise doesn't like all the fees they pay and the energy manager is responsible to help the franchise owner. So you can help them work together in a different way. And, you know, publicity and posters and engaging shoppers in the store, in the community about an energy efficiency project. That's all starting to sound pretty cool. And what if I told you, I can make 75% of the people that engage in this campaign think better about your brand? How much would you pay for that? Or if I told you 50% of those people responding to a survey, they're going to shop more in your supermarket because you gave them a chance to put the PV on the roof and they think it's theirs in some way. How much is that worth to you? So maybe we're not competing to be the lowest cost provider against other people doing traditional stuff because now we're bringing the people into it. We're bringing happy shoppers. How cool is that? So I know what you all want right now. Please stop with all these hypothetical questions and just tell me where I can buy it. You're already sold. You want to be a superhero. I can see it in your eyes. Everybody, we have shirts and everything. So what is Super-Heero if we didn't get there yet? It's just a new way to connect to shoppers and communities and build brand loyalty, saving energy while delivering social impact and community engagement. How? Energy efficiency measures. Don't care what they are. PV, refrigeration, LED. You give me a building, I'll find something. Don't worry. Something can be fixed. And sharing the benefits with the people that can get involved. I mean, it's pretty simple. And everybody likes to feel good about that. So we have a process. And it's discovery and audits. We go there, we talk with the brand, we talk with the different stakeholders. You do an energy audit of the building. Maybe they already know what they want to do. They just say, Tom, do PV. Don't talk to me about anything else. I don't want your commercial sales pitch, just PV. Fine, we'll do it. Then you make a technical design, you make a business plan, you get your permissions, you build a marketing and advertising campaign, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever they use, media, classic, radio, it's okay. Then you do a campaign and raise funding via the crowd. We have a crowd lending platform built on Italy's #1 sustainability crowd lending platform. Enter the crowd. We're a white label, which means we use their engine, put our logo on it, Super-Heero, and we can raise money from people. It's regulated, it's safe, it's controlled, and it works. And then we do the implementation. We put the PV on the roof and monitor it and celebrate. And we can adapt this process to any supermarket, any stakeholder engaged, any ownership structure, because supermarkets are different. There's some small ones in the city center, there's some medium-sized ones on the periphery, and then there's some bigger ones on the outside. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's owned by a brand or if it's owned by a franchise owner or any combination. You can always work a contract that works with it. The big idea is to find something to do and then to do it and involve people and to have a mechanism that gets everyone engaged. So we did that. And the core of this presentation and paper are the results of the 3 pilot campaigns that we did in the EU project, one of them afterwards. And these supermarkets and supermarket owners were not involved in the EU project. They did not get funding. They were not beneficiaries. We just had to convince them to work with us. And we did. In the cities of Padova, Pordenone, and Verona. And what we did, in the first one, we just did PV. And the Comune of Padova, who was a project partner, they gave tickets to a city festival to go see gardens. The supermarket was skeptical. The second one, they understood it a little bit more, and we did PV again. We just want PV, don't touch anything else. But they offered a coupon. 30 euros of spending, we'll give you €5 coupon in the store where the intervention was done. So they took a little more confidence, and we got an EV recharge because they have some EV points. The third campaign we did, we got to do more interventions, PV, heat pump, refrigeration system upgrade, LED, relighting, and then they offered a coupon again, EV charge, and an incentive for staff. Any staff member got 10% interest rate. You can't get that at the bank. My bank gives me 0. I keep asking them, when are you going to give me an interest rate? No, 0. We gave them 10. So that was interesting, and there's a picture of what the campaign looked like when it was 9% funded for one of these. And our total metrics, we've done 3 supermarkets. We've raised $185,000 from investors, involving 199 people who have invested with us. Each year we save 174 megawatts and about 75 tons of CO2 with the interventions we've done to date. So those are some of our KPIs. And this illustrates, Danielle, how am I doing? Oh, this is smoking. This illustrates that if I project out in time, any EE measure has a return of investment. This impianto, this intervention for them, PV system on this supermarket, in time has a value, depending on the energy price that they have to pay, of $230, $460, $690. So the numbers are attractive. And we can share that. Rewards and bonus programs. So aside from the leasing contract that we do with the supermarket across time, 5 to 7 years as an ESCO, we allow and we work with the supermarkets to build a reward and bonus campaign. I mentioned the tickets to the gardens. This is what we designed for a coupon. They just go scan the barcode and they get €5 off their expenses. There's the EV column. It's called Sire Carica that they co-own as a brand. We donated some trees to the Comune of Padova with the project. So all these concepts we started to get in. And you can tune these campaigns. These are actually really exciting concepts. You can tune the campaign to be phased in time. So first, only the people in the room get to invest. And I'm going to leave it to you for a week. So make your decision, but you've got 1 week to invest. Next week, I'm going to open it up to everyone at the conference. And the week after, everybody in Luxembourg gets to invest. And when we opened up on the national stage in about 2 hours, the campaign, it expires because there are already 13,000 investors with 30 million euro in the platform. So they're just waiting for who offers the next neat project to finance. So part of the game is making sure you have money in an ecosystem that's looking for projects. And part of the game is having projects that the ecosystem can invest in. And this is actually a multi-sided business model that you tune and grow over time. And then you can tune the interest rates, and you can tune the bonus program. You can tune the media and communication campaign. And you can continue to work on exciting concepts. And we gave webinars to the participants. At 9 o'clock at night, we were talking to people in their nightgowns about what is this crowd lending at 10 minutes. Thank you, Danielle. You're doing great. How does this campaign work, and et cetera, et cetera. We designed comics and cartoons. And this was our first campaign where we had 35 investors, but a small project. So we limited the amount anyone could invest to €5,000. Otherwise, someone with €40,000 could close you out in 10 minutes, and you lose your opportunity to engage lots of people. We found that the average investment is about €1,000 per person. And we can see where they invested from, the interest rate, and there's GDPR involved. And we got 5 new investors in this campaign into the platform, which means 30 of them were existing investors. And we now have done this across 3 campaigns. So you can start to run some statistics in terms of average investment, how many investors, the interest rate, and interest rates grew in the last couple of years over time, along with our project. We saw one last week at 12% in the platform. Not ours, but a different project. So this is cost of capital then starts to get higher. But the objective is engagement, not just cost of capital, and brand loyalty. So if we can put a price on that, is good. And one of the big statistics down here that we really appreciated, this last campaign, 78% of the euro funding this campaign came from their card holders. So existing loyalty program holders of this supermarket chain. So we give them a tool to engage their loyal customers and to reward them. So that's pretty cool. And we see statistics on age and gender. And if a supermarket wants to design a campaign to get to any segment of a market, we can help them work with that. And we learned a lot of lessons about how to do that, good practices, bad practices. And we found when we're in the supermarket, we ambush someone at the milk counter. They don't like that because they're there to get milk, and they think they're getting spammed. You know, it's the phone call we all get all day. So you have to find where people are naturally at in their habitat, ready to listen to you. So some images from our second pilot in the store, publicity, news, and then our last one, I mean, this is the president, the gentleman there, of the supermarket chain, Tuerk. Cutting the ribbon at our intervention. We've got bags, we've got food they offered. There was the press, media, articles in the paper, made it on the TV. Kids, that's mine. And, wow. So that was really a great, nice result. And we enjoyed it. So much that we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it more. So now we've started scaling Super-Heero, because what we want to do is go big. So what are we doing with scaling Super-Heero? It's right in the name, research to market, right in the name, scaling Super-Heero. It's right there. We're going to scale it. We're going to bring it to new buildings. We're going to sharpen it. We're going to widen it and go more. So 3 projects isn't enough to do statistics and analytics and much with data. We need more. And not just supermarket now. Think of any building that has a relationship with its clientele, be it a restaurant, a hotel, a shopping center, box retailer, sports. So we're going there to build brand loyalty, same concepts. And we have a lot of other things we're going to connect to, clean energy transition plans, energy communities, making this an investment product so big investors can get into a portfolio of projects. If a supermarket gives us 50 supermarkets, we're in trouble in terms of implementing that. So also a part of it has to come from investors. So we have to make this attractive and understandable to them. Sign-up campaigns, because getting investors, how am I doing? 14 minutes, okay, thank you. Sign-up campaigns in commercial shopping centers is going to be awesome and hard. Ooh, wrong button. We have some technology things that are exciting, voltage regulation. So the tension coming into this building decides how efficient the lighting system is. And if you're closer to the distribution station, the voltage has to be higher, and if you're at the end of the line, it's lower. So you can control that, and just by hooking on a box that controls your voltage, you can improve your efficiency of the systems in your building. But you have to do an audit to do it. So here's a secret tool that applies to anyone that they want to listen to how am I? Incentives, this ties me to your presentation. We have a structured way to look at incentives to make them accessible to people and to make it turnkey. So we take care of the paperwork stuff, we hope, if we can do that. Life Terra, this is a great story because we met them at Sustainable Places last year. We offset the carbon footprint of last year's conference with Life Terra by our Spanish branch going out into the hills and planting trees as a team building event. So Life Terra, they work with schools, they work with companies, and it's not that I buy a tree somewhere else. I go plant a tree with my company or the conference afterwards and make it a team building and an educational event for schools and kids. That's awesome. I thought, no one's doing this. They've gotten 6 million trees planted so far. The numbers don't lie. They're doing it. And they've got 56,000 people involved. So if we can combine this Super-Heero thing with this Life Terra thing, I start to get excited, especially when I think about schools. So we're going to bring it to schools. So some of the pilots we're working, there they are. Schools, commercial shopping centers, that's my condominium, that's where I live. We're going to do it there. We're going to invite my condo to participate in putting PV on the roof, and it's going to work. A small airport, a sport association, also in Pavia Technology Park, that's where we have the R2M office, and we're initiating all these discussions and also other project partners to bring this further. So the unique value proposition, we had this kickoff meeting, and one of the partners said, I can't believe it. You know, what we've actually done is we've made energy efficiency sexy again. Getting people involved, engaging the community, social impact. I can't think of any other approach that actually delivers social impact because you pay money interest. You give them coupons. You increase community building on the territory. All those things that, you know, we hear about at this conference that we're supposed to do, this is an actual approach to do it. So I kind of feel like we're on a lottery ticket here, and if we get this out to enough people and we scale it, it can go big. We can raise capital, create a new business that doesn't exist, that can actually go out and make some change on the territory. So that is scaling Super-Heero. Danielle, how'd I do? 17 minutes, all right. So I cut myself short on time for questions, but 1 or 2 minutes for a question, if there are. Hi, Mia. Yeah, you gotta pull it too.
This is a wonderful idea because I think this is one solution because in some places we are talking about this positive energy districts. And it's not always easy to find place on your own building. And then you could have this on this kind of a common building. So that's a wonderful idea, I think. So congratulations. And also, in these energy communities, it has been a problem that you can't buy the energy from your peer. So this peer-to-peer selling is inhibited. So this could be also a solution for that. So congratulations, very nice ideas.
Thank you, we hope so.
Anyone else?
Okay. And we're available anytime. So now I'm going to switch to the next presentation. Number 3. Yes, Nitesh, that's you. All right, so now we'll hear from ArcelorMittal on the integration of building information modeling into the life cycle assessment of an office building. Let's go.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here today. I'm Nitesh Karmacharya from ArcelorMittal Global R&D in Luxembourg. And I'm very happy to present here our project with you. At ArcelorMittal, the R&D team is always encouraging decision makers and designers, stakeholders to consider environmental emission throughout the construction processes. And as a part of that, my colleague Jose and I conducted this project to integrate life cycle assessment with building information modeling. Just to get the sense of the room, how many people use building information modeling or BIM? Maybe. Yeah. Okay, that's a very, very nice number. Thank you. So I'm sure many of you have heard already this in our conference about the Green Deal during the conference, our shared goal of achieving carbon neutral economy by 2050. It's ambitious and it's yet a critical goal. And as a part of this journey, we aim to reduce emission by at least 55% by 2030 compared to 1990 level. And this is a very big milestone that we have to achieve. Currently, the construction sector accounts for a significant share of the global carbon emission, while the energy sector is being handled nicely. We can see from the presentations before. We also have to look on the embodied carbon in climate change, which should be clear. In fact, many countries are now considering embodying carbon in building permit process itself, especially for publicly funded projects. This is already applicable. This highlights how essential it is to calculate environmental emission from the outset. One of the most effective methods addressing this challenge is life cycle assessment. And it offers a systematic and scientific approach to evaluate the environmental impact of all stages in the product life. At the oh, sorry, I think I went one too far. At the same time, building information modeling is also becoming an industry standard. From conceptual design all the way to construction, everyone is using building information modeling because it saves a lot of time. It is more scientific, it's more well-rounded. It's also becoming a part of building permit. Countries like Estonia are leading the way to moving towards paperless building permit process, relying entirely on building information modeling and evaluation. I believe it's only a matter of time that other European countries will follow this path, and it will be a norm. BIM can greatly simplify and automate the data acquisition process that is required for LCA through automatic generations of a bill of material. By integrating LCA and BIM together, we can automate two critical processes that is required for the number. And that's getting information on quantity and computing the carbon emission. In our project, we have embedded environmental properties directly into the objects within the BIM building information modeling system. So by objects, I mean, imagine this in this conference room, each chair is a building object, and each chair has a label on it that shows what is the carbon emission value it is. Then we can know and calculate immediately how much carbon is there, embodied carbon is there in this room. So this is what we want in our digital platform. We want to have a similar approach in the construction industry, and BIM is the way to go. So there are several BIM tools that currently the market follows, and we wanted to make sure that our study works or affects a majority of the share. So we did a little survey, and we conducted a survey among 11 different design offices, and among them, most of them were using Revit for BIM. Also, a market research done by USP Marketing Consultancy shows that more than 80% use products from Autodesk and Graphisoft. This leads to the BIM tool Revit and ArchiCAD. So these are commonly used BIM softwares. So to reach higher compatibility, we chose Revit to enrich the BIM object and then use the environmental data for the computation. For the computation, how we do that? So we chose Westiel and Decoupe for their model and tried to develop it. So they have divided BIM LCA integration in 5 different types. So first, we use a BIM software from which bill of materials or bill of quantity can be extracted. LCA software can be implemented, and we get the results. The second one is we get the BIM software. The BIM is directly generating the IFC, which is the standard format of sharing data. It's also text format. Goes directly to the LCA software, and LCA results are published. The third one is BIM software going to BIM viewer and then creating further, computing it in LCA software, we get the LCA result. Fourth one is BIM software with a plugin, we get the result. The fifth one is we implement both BIM and LCA data and simultaneously compute the both. And we took this and adopted to us, and so what we did was inside the building object, BIM object itself, we wanted to include the information of environmental parameters, and that's what we did. Just to give you a brief idea on which LCA boundaries to be considered, we took product stage of the construction material, end of life scenario, and potential benefit stage, which is A1, A3, C1, C1, C3, C4, and D, respectively. Within the BIM object, in each object, we could implement these informations as text. So it includes data from EPD, and these data were incorporated. And the emission that we were more focused on was global warming potential, so carbon emission. So what we did was, sorry about the, there has been a mistake in the image there, but we implemented 2 of our EPDs, which is standard structural steel and X-carved steel, in all our steel products, which includes structural frame, structural column, beams, and structural foundations. So once we implement this in the BIM object, in Revit environment, we could model a building. So for example, this is an office building. There we modeled it with our BIM objects, and we could create a scheduling, and within the scheduling, there was an option to schedule the LCA indicators, so the carbon emissions. Also, we implemented a low carbon switch, meaning our X-carb steel, which is more eco-friendly by being 100% recycled and 100% renewed, 100% produced with the renewable energy, we wanted to have this switch. So once we click on the switch, we get immediately the result for using X-carb steel in contrary to using standard steel. And this was within a Revit environment, so all the computations are done within the software. We have similar options. For example, we can use one-click LCA plugin inside the Revit. This is where we can upload our model, and they would compute the LCA indicators. Here, the problem is we have to choose which EPD to apply. So this can be a problem and also can be an option because we can use different EPDs on it. And the difference is when one-click LCA does the computation, it takes a volumetric approach, so meaning it will upload a volume of different objects, and these objects has to be assigned different materials. What we did in our BIM objects, we took the length of each member, and each member has different unit mass, and this unit mass is used for calculation of the emission. So just to give you a brief result, how we get from different sources. So one we did for the manual computation, then we use the BIM objects and one-click LCA plugin. So the one-click was only giving us for A1, A3, so we just use that comparison there. And we can see the comparison is quite consistent. And although, as I mentioned, we took the length for computation of emission from BIM object, it's more conservative. One-click LCA took volume, so there is adjustment in the volume of the objects, and that gives a bit less conservative result. While manual calculation, this is a common manual calculation process, and it was a bit less emissive, it was shown, because maybe we took we are less conservative with the quantity. So the result obtained in all three methods are comparable, and they were giving good results with consistent result among all three topics. That means we can use the BIM objects directly, and to have this directly means to save a little bit more time and a little bit more efficiency. The different objects, sorry. If we use properly the LCA enriched BIM objects, we can do or compare among different materials that we have and use a more scientific approach to choose the best options that we have, and also enriching BIM building information model in object level is something that is not being practiced a lot, and we have to start doing it now. Right now, it's more on project level. Limitations, there are also many limitations to it, and we need to slowly overcome it. At the moment, for example, if we use our BIM object, it may not be compatible with BIM object from other providers for the computation of LCA. So for example, if we are using a column from our BIM object, and then there is a concrete column, for example, and we want to compute the full carbon emission, maybe the column is not being taken into consideration. So this might happen. And the way to overcome it is to have more standardization process. For example, the National BIM Library of United Kingdom, they have a special set of requirements to be followed just so that they will host your BIM object. So this can be a way to go to standardize the BIM objects. And also, the environmental data is, since inputted manually, has to be updated regularly, and this may change over time because EPT has an expiration date. this is a quick glance of how we can download the BIM object that's provided by ArcelorMittal. It's on Section's Design Aid website, and you can also scan the QR code to get there. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Perfectly on time at 11 minutes. Warm up, because I got one. So, we got one.
I just have a inquiry, very interesting. Can you go back to the QR code?
Okay.
I think you touched it when you talked about standardization. But for this to get better and for more people to do it, I was trying to understand, did the BIM software companies have to do anything? Is it the steel or the material providers that have to do anything? Or are it stakeholders that require this, that have to do something? So what's the trigger to unlock the next step, or what is the next step?
So the next step for us would be, right now we have only implemented this for column, beams, and foundations. So these three product category of our market, but we would also like to have it on floors, or floors, for example, or facades. So this would be the next step. First of all, to have it properly within our ecosystem. Once that's done, at the same time, we would like to encourage other manufacturers also, because manufacturers provide their BIM objects to promote their products. And at the same time, if they include this information within their objects, maybe that will be more standardized. And this is not standardized by us. It's already there in ISO standard.
Okay. And it was interesting because during the opening ceremony yesterday, your representative, I forget her role.
She's there.
Hello. Very interesting. You said that every beam saved the planet. I forget the number, but it was really interesting to hear that claim made that, you know, every steel beam from ArcelorMittal that you use is saving this many tons of carbon.
It was the special steel X-card which is used
Yeah.
in our headquarters, and the one in headquarters, it will be 10,000 kilograms of CO2 per beam, and we have 10,000 beams there.
That's a great statistic.
10,000 tons.
Yeah.
Compliments. Any other questions? Okay, then we'll transition to our last speaker, who
Thank
has
you.
already been a hero for the session once. You ended the slide. I thought when I stuck the microphone in, I did something catastrophic, so I'm relieved. All right. And sadly, we're already at the last presentation of this paper session, which will be Danielle Abbey from the University of Sheffield to talk to us about whole life carbon impacts of educational retrofit at scale.
Hi, my name's Danielle. I'm a PhD student from the University of Sheffield, and I'm going to be talking through a bit of the modelling that I've been doing recently. So first, a bit of background. Why do we need retrofit at scale? I'm sure many of you have seen these statistics before, that the built environment accounts for a huge proportion of carbon emissions, and in the UK, that's 25% it directly accounts for. The majority of this is caused by operational emissions, so that's lighting, heating, cooling, etc. And we really need to be reducing these emissions if we're going to meet our targets. With 75% of our buildings predicted to still be standing by 2050, the obvious solution to this is retrofit. But when it comes to retrofit, that means a huge increase in the amount of materials we're going to be needing to add to our existing buildings. And that is what we need to do, is reduce our operational emissions without catastrophically increasing this embodied emissions, which currently account for 25% of our built environment emissions. This is where whole life carbon assessments can come in really useful, because it allows us to model emissions of buildings over the entire lifespan of that building, including maintenance and replacement, the end of life emissions, and allows us to understand exactly what needs to be done to meet carbon budgets and targets. Firstly, some research aims which were developed from a systematic literature review. What is the impact of retrofit on total whole life carbons for our non-residential stock? And I'll be using the English school buildings as a case study for this. School buildings can be a really good starting point for trying to understand impacts in non-residential buildings because they are directly owned by and driven, and retrofit is driven by the local governments, which allows us to try and influence policy as much as possible and try and get retrofit started. Secondly, what is the impact of material emissions from a whole life perspective on meeting carbon budgets and targets? So typically, a lot of studies only do upfront emissions, and that doesn't include maintenance, replacement, and end-of-life emissions. And finally, what is the best pathway we should be doing to to successfully retrofit our schools to meet the carbon budget, and how does this compare to current practice? Firstly, the methodology. I needed to collect data for every school in England, and this was done using two key data sources. The first being the government database, which provides coordinates for every primary, secondary school and college within England, and these have different occupancy patterns which must be accounted for in energy consumption. And the second database is the Verisk UK database, which provides geometry and age data for every educational building within England, but doesn't disaggregate between primary, secondary schools and colleges. So what I did is I used the coordinates that were provided by the government to search for every educational building within a prescribed radius to find geometry and age data for every primary, secondary school and college. Unfortunately, there were some data quality issues within the Verisk database. So a large proportion had unclassified age data. So to this data, I applied a distribution of what typical ages are within England. And also, through case study analysis, it was found that height data was quite drastically overestimated in a lot of cases and inaccurate. So I also applied a distribution to this instead of using the height data provided by Verisk. Secondly, energy modelling. I used simple energy models, such as the degree days model for heating, and input data and the simple model were tested on 235 case studies, which we had metered energy use data for, to make sure that the average error of energy consumption averaged out at 0, so that we could make sure we knew we were modelling a typical school building within the UK. Whole life carbon assessments, the system boundaries were from an A1 to C4, which means that was over the entire lifespan of the retrofit material, and we used various data sources to find this information. Next, I had to assign a carbon budget, so how much carbon the primary, secondary schools and colleges should be using by 2050 if we want to meet targets. I used two different sources of carbon budget. The first called the CCC carbon budget, which the government has set its carbon budget in line with this value. And the second is called the Tyndall budget, which is a more stringent budget, which assumes that because we're a more developed country, we should have a smaller share of future carbon emissions in the future. To work out the primary, secondary schools and colleges proportion, I estimated the current carbon emissions that primary, secondary schools and colleges are taking up and took that off as a percentage. So obviously this has the limitations that certain sectors might be harder to decarbonise than others, which means that they should really be having a larger proportion in the future. But this should hopefully give us a ballpark figure that we should be aiming for to meet with our school stock. Another limitation is that this is only direct UK emissions, and certain retrofit materials will likely be imported. But it was found that 75% of UK building materials that were used in the UK were produced in the UK, so this was deemed an appropriate assumption. This presentation will go through one retrofit scenario, which is called Part L2B, and that refers to the UK building regulation standard for non-residential buildings. This means improvements to U values using insulation on the roof, wall and floor, replacement glazing where it needs to be to 1.6 U value, and I also modelled that all existing heating and hot water systems would be replaced with heat pumps as well. I also modelled 3 decarbonisation scenarios as sensitivity analysis because obviously the future is uncertain. The first scenario being no decarbonisation, so that assumes that the electricity carbon factor will remain constant by 2050, there'll be no material decarbonisation, and the heat pump refrigerant type would be a typical emitter, and it's called R513A. The second scenario is called falling short, and that's named after the UK National Grid's falling short scenario for electricity decarbonisation, and shows significant decarbonisation of the national grid by 2050, but that does not meet net zero. Also, I modelled simple material decarbonisation, which follows the UK's industrial pathways predictions and is called business as usual model. This was very simple sensitivity material decarbonisation modelling, where basically the retrofit product, the material which took up the larger proportion of that product, was assumed to follow that pathway. So for example, heat pumps, the majority of that is made out of steel and iron, so then heat pumps were assumed to follow the steel and iron decarbonisation pathway, which is why I've put in different sensitivities to understand potential changes to that. And the final scenario assumes leading the way, and basically states that by 2037 we'd actually be achieving negative electricity decarbonisation due to carbon capture and storage, and the material decarbonisation pathway also includes carbon capture and storage. It also assumes that a low carbon refrigerant would be used in heat pumps. Firstly, the baseline operational carbon results. So this is what would happen if no retrofit occurs in our school stock. You can see that even if by 2037 we're actually emitting negative emissions from electricity, we cannot meet the CCC carbon budget. And this is because schools in England and a lot of places around the world rely on gas and fossil fuel boilers, which can't be decarbonised, and we need to replace those. Basically, this shows that we need retrofit if we are going to meet our carbon budget, especially because of that reliance on fossil fuel boilers. This scenario shows what would happen if everything was retrofit next year, but there was no decarbonisation of electricity or materials. And it shows that even if we did retrofit everything next year, which is 20,000 schools, and as a lot of the presentations previously have showed, would be practically unfeasible due to a lot of issues, even operational carbon alone would be above the CCC carbon budget. So not only do we need retrofit at scale, but we need decarbonisation of other sectors as well in line with this to try and assist with the success of retrofit itself. If we have decarbonisation in other sectors, we can meet the CCC carbon budget. The R=50 dotted lines show the government's current yearly plans for retrofit of schools, which is 50 per year, and shows that this is completely inadequate if we are to meet the CCC carbon budget. In fact, by 2050, only 7% of schools would be retrofit. We need to increase that retrofit rate to 625 to 2,200, depending on the decarbonisation scenario modelled. The falling short can be seen to be a kind of strange shape, and that's because of the steeper curve at the start is due to the upfront carbon cost of retrofit materials. This then levels out, and then another steeper curve because we have modelled a heat pump lifespan of 15 years, and those would need to be replaced, which also shows significant carbon emissions from this. Meeting our most stringent carbon budget is shown to be very difficult. This again models everything being retrofit next year to a very high standard, and it shows that even with falling short decarbonisation, operational carbon would go above the Tyndall budget. Leading the way is shown to fall below for operational carbon, but once we account for the material emissions, so from the retrofit itself, this then goes above and shows the significance of whole life carbon assessments in the future. Here is a breakdown of carbon emissions for the different retrofit measures, and shows that MEP installations or heat pump installations cause the majority of the retrofit project's emissions, and that's unsurprising and is agreed upon by past literature. We can see that even if there was no replacement of heat pumps, then we would still miss the Tyndall budget significantly. I currently modelled typical types of insulation, so glass, wool and EPS, but there are biogenic materials which hold potential to sequester carbon over their lifespan. This is only a temporary storage unless carbon capture can happen at the end of that material's lifespan, but it does have potential to store significant amounts of material. So if we use the same volume of insulation as I modelled, that would be minus 0.2 to minus 2 megatons of CO2, which could be significant. Finally, I've done a comparison to demolition and refurbishment. So There is argument that demolition and new construction could be beneficial because it can achieve higher, better operational standards because it's easier to achieve airtightness, and also you're not constrained by existing factors like orientation and building form. What I've done here is compared the whole life carbon of retrofit, assuming it's been retrofit in 2025, to different new construction benchmarks. And it shows that no school is above the REBA 2030 target, which is what we are in the UK currently trying to strive towards. Some are above the Letty Band A+ target, as I've called it here, but that achieves a very, very low embodied carbon, something that's not really achievable, especially at scale within the industry at the moment. So it shows that demolition should be taken with care. As we begin to, if we manage to decarbonise more successfully, the amount above the Letty Band A+ reduces. It should be noted that this was only over a 25-year period, and over a 60-year period, there was approximately 0.01% of our floor area that could be justified to be replaced. But demolition at scale is not an option if we want to meet our carbon budgets, basically. And the more we can decarbonise our electricity and material, the more important our embodied carbon becomes, and the more attractive retrofit and retaining our building stock seems in this comparison. So some key findings. Retrofit at current rates is insufficient to meet carbon budgets for the English school stock. Retrofit alone is not enough, and we need to decarbonise in other sectors such as electricity and material decarbonisation. Building systems pose a carbon hotspot which could be focused on to help speed up this decarbonisation. And current attainable new construction benchmarks are not sufficient to justify demolition of our school stock despite operational savings. In future work, we could incorporate cost calculations to try and understand the economic impact of this retrofit at scale, incorporate a wider range of non-residential typologies, include mechanical cooling so that it can be applicable to climates all over the world, and understand what the impacts of potential future temperatures could be. So should we be adding in adaptability now that we know the high embodied carbon cost of these building systems and what they could be. Yeah, thank you.